Thanks for coming today. I'm Io Wright. I'm the co-founder and chief program officer at PostFire. We're a large-scale survivors network, and we guide survivors through recovery with expert guidance every single step. We are a not-for-profit, and if you have already joined PostFire, wonderful, happy to see you. If you have not, it's 100% free. We launched our full platform in September. Come check us out at postfirela.org. We'll keep you updated on important information, further expert Q&As, and if you have things that you're worried about or don't understand, we are always happy to chase down expert answers for you on things. Today, we're going to talk about home hardening. We're going to talk about what it is, how it keeps your home and your family safe, and how important it is to keeping your home insurable and retaining its value and loanability, which, there's a lot going on. We're not all able to think of all of these things in advance. We're joined by Steve Hawks, Senior Director for Wildfire at IBHS, who they are widely seen as the gold standard in home hardening, and Jay Lopez, who is the former Assistant Chief at LA County Fire Department and now the Executive Director of the California Wildfire Mitigation Program Authority. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Two extremely well qualified people to tell us everything we need to know about home hardening. Jay also is an Altadena resident and was able to get his home off of the California Fair Plan by participating in the IBHS Wildfire Prepared program, which we're going to get into. So we've noted all of the questions that you guys have submitted. We're going to work to get through them all, hopefully cover them in the conversation. If you have not submitted questions or new things come up for you, use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. You can put things in there. Our team will answer them if we have the answer, and if not, I will get to them at the end of the conversation. This is being recorded and it'll be uploaded to YouTube and our website with closed captions and Spanish translations. Okay, so on a very basic level, I'm going to start with an alarming statistic, which is that megafires have increased 250% in the last 10 years. So really taking that in, what that means is wildfire preparedness is incredibly important for not just people who've gone through one, but everyone in this country, in the world, really. So as the world becomes more and more fire prone, and we look to rebuild some of us homes that a megafire has already taken from us, we have to be thinking about like what I refer to as an octopus of issues, right? How do we afford the rebuild? How do we afford being able to stay? How do we rebuild in a way that protects us, our safety, but also how it protects our what is for many of us the largest investment we will ever make. So one of the greatest tools towards that is fire resilient building and fire mitigation methods. So studies have shown there's an incredible institute called Headwaters Economics, and they do tons of research into the economic impact of all of these things. Studies show that 60% of homes that are built with and maintain wildfire resistant measures survive wildfires. We lost over just about 14,500 single family residences between the Palisades and Altadena. So if those homes, if all of our homes had been wildfire prepared, that number could have been 5,600. So if we just really think about the scale of the devastation that we all went through, cutting that down by 60% is tens of thousands of lives that are not completely upended. The impact of resiliency is immeasurable. So as many of you on this call know, the disaster after the disaster has been discovering the realities of insurance coverage and the lack of insurance coverage and what it means to only have California Fair Plan and nothing supplemental. We see it at Postfire every day, what people are dealing with who don't have enough to rebuild their homes or don't have any enough ALE to cover living somewhere else or no personal property coverage. According to Insurance Commissioner Tony Signorelli, everyone in the LA wildfires was underinsured, right? So we have to bear these things in mind as we start rebuilding in this new world that is much more disaster prone. And we can't use old methods, approaches to building for this new reality of this new world. We have to be thinking about how to make sure that our homes that we build are insurable. The other arm of this octopus is what it does to your home value when you build a home that's uninsurable. It's not just the inability to get insurance. If your home can only get California Fair Plan or no insurance at all, it also drastically affects your appraisal value and whether or not you're able to sell that home. So to me, the worst thing after a fire would be building a home that burns down again. And the second worst thing would be building a home that I can't afford to stay in because I can't afford to get insurance on it or it's too expensive. And then I can't sell it if I need to sell it because nobody wants to buy a house that's uninsurable. So again, not recreating yesterday's solutions for today's realities. The good news, that was a lot of bad news, but the good news is there's a roadmap for all of this. Steve and Jay are here to tell us about it. Steve works for IBHS, which the insurance industry funds this incredible research institute whose entire mandate is to find the best methods of mitigation across all disasters. The industry does this because they're in the business of gambling on risk, right? So if IBHS can tell them which houses are safest, they know which houses are worth gambling on. And not only that, but they're willing to give discounts for houses that meet the standards that IBHS sets, which is where those of us on this call come in. So, in terms of wildfire, IBHS has a program called the IBHS Wildfire Prepared Home Standard. And there's the Wildfire Prepared Home, and then there's the Wildfire Prepared Home Plus. Those are the highest level you can get is the Wildfire Prepared Home Plus, which is really something you want to implement before you start the rebuild process. It is possible to retrofit a home. It is more expensive. It is a little more involved. It is totally possible to do, as Jay has done. But to reach that plus, you really want to do it at the build level. So today we're not going to get into the nuts and bolts of like what mesh count you need or what, exactly the details of the technicals. I'm really going to push you to just hand it off to your architect and your builder and mandate that that is something that they incorporate. Okay, so we got it. The insurance industry really likes IBHS. We're going to tell you everything that you need to know, and then hopefully you're going to go and you're going to build a fire-resistant home. So first of all, Steve, can you please just give us like a basic rundown on what home hardening even is?
Yeah, absolutely. And Io, thanks for having me here today. And I'm going to share my screen here so we can take a look at what that looks like. And can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And so let's talk a little bit about how wildfires impact communities, how that occurs. So a wildfire starts, and a wildfire needs, or any fire needs, right over here on the right-hand side of the screen is called the fire triangle. It needs fuel source, it needs heat, and it needs oxygen in order to burn. And the only one of those that we can really control with any effectiveness, especially during a wildfire, is the fuel component. And when we look at a wildfire, when it starts, it's burning in natural vegetation and it's creating embers that can fly for very long distances, miles. And when they land, they can either directly ignite the structure by landing on the structure itself, igniting a vulnerable component, or maybe traveling into the structure through a vent or a void space, igniting the inside of the structure. Or they can land around the structure, which is kind of the indirect ignition from embers, and ignite flammable vegetation or fences or other things that surround the house. And then that fire can ignite the structure from there. And while the embers are flying into the community, the flames from the main fire front will eventually reach the outer edge of the community. And through direct flame contact with the homes in that location, or radiant heat, which is a very significant fire burning close by a combustible item where it can heat that item up to its ignition temperature and ignite that item, it can lead to the ignition of homes as well on the outer edge. And when we have homes in the community begin to ignite, the fire really changes from a wildfire to um, an urban fire where it's burning urban fuels. And in that context, fuel, the component that we can control, is anything that can burn, like fences and accessory structures, homes, vehicles, and anything that you can think of that might be on properties in the urban environment could ignite and burn and allow for the spread of the fire. And and so then it's really a function at that point of how do we limit the spread of the fire so it just doesn't lead to that uncontrolled fire spread through the community. And that really occurs first at the parcel level, at each individual property. And we look at that at two different things. So one is the things that surround the house, and we call that reducing the exposure. So we want to limit the amount of combustible items around the house, and particularly really close to the house that could ignite and potentially expose the house to the fire from that item. So we can potentially remove things from the property. We can relocate things on the property to further away so that if that item does ignite, it doesn't expose the house to that extreme radiant heat or flame contact. Or we can replace combustible items like in the bottom left corner down here, this wood fence with a non-combustible section of fence close to the home. And while we're looking at all the things that surround the house, we also want to address the components of the home and the materials that they're made out of and increase the resilience of the home. And looking at all those components, the roofing, the vents, windows, siding, etc., all the way to the ground. And if we have vulnerabilities, um, then we can address those vulnerabilities if you have an existing home through retrofitting. And if you're building new, you really want to build with a high standard to begin with. It's the most cost-effective and efficient way to get resilience built into the structures when it's brand new.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's really, IO, what we're looking at, and what home hardening is a combination. We like to call it a systems-based approach under these really high intensity wildfires, like we had, like in Eaton and Palisades fire. You have to really take that systems-based approach to bring a lot of resilience to the home to withstand that type of fire.
Call me childish, but when I hear a breakdown of how fire spreads, I think of like this like monster that just likes to eat and it likes to eat anything combustible. And so we have to prevent the monster from getting anything combustible to eat. Which is just a dumb metaphor that helps me remember what I'm dealing with. So to recap, we have to be careful about fuels, food for the monster that lives in, on, and around the house to protect it from embers, flames, and radiant heat, which can make the house ignite. And then it's a system an ecosystem that involves a number of different measures to keep fire out. So, again, without getting into the nuts and bolts of what exactly one has to do, because most of us are just going to ask our contractors or our architects to make sure that it's implemented. How complex is it to achieve this?
Yeah, so let's take a look at what we have built from 10 years or more than 10 years, 15 plus years of research, and taking the research from other renowned organizations that look at how structures are impacted during a wildfire, like the Insurance or National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, and others. And and also during our post-fire analysis, where we examine the structures that were impacted by these high intensity fires. And we built what we call the wildfire prepared home program that you referenced earlier. And the items that are on the base or the bottom of the screen are what we call the wildfire prepared home or base level designation. And they're really designed to protect the home from that ember exposure, of looking at those components of the home and its surroundings that are most vulnerable to that ember that comes and lands on your property. So it's the roof material, um, the vents, the bottom 6 inches of the house at the wall where the ground and the wall meet. Are particularly vulnerable locations for embers, and then the surrounding area, in particular that first 5 feet. When you have combustible items there, um, we've seen as anything that's combustible there can be exposed to that ember, ignite, and then even a small flame there can transfer to a vulnerable component of the home and lead to the ignition of the home and the loss. And then when you get to the plus level in the items in the blue box, it provides the maximum protection that you can build into a home to withstand all three exposures, flames, radiant heat, and embers. And it addresses all the other components of the home, the windows, siding, eaves, and so forth, to provide that maximum protection. And is particularly important to accomplish this level of resilience when you're building new. When you're retrofitting, start out by retrofitting to the base level to withstand that ember exposure. And then once you've reached that goal, then continue progressing towards the plus level designation to build that full resilience against the wildfire.
So to clarify, starting anywhere is good. Like doing any one of the things in the ecosystem is good and helpful. Jay likes that. But if you have a standing home, trying to reach IBHS base via retrofitting measures listed on the bottom, but if you're starting from scratch, like many of us are, build straight to IBHS Wildfire Prepared Plus, correct?
Absolutely. And Jay can give an example of his situation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
please.
so yeah, and it's a lot here on that slide. It's a lot to do, but how do you go about it? So, uh, when the previous slides, when Steve was showing that those knobs reduce exposure, increase hardening, you gotta play with those two knobs. Well, if the fix to this to do an assessment around your home, in the case of my house, which is right behind me, the exposure that I have, excuse me, front of the house is a little different to the exposures on the side of the house because there's homes right there. So you harden to, or you look at from your house out, you stand up right in front of your house and then look out in there. And you can start with the 0 to 5 feet. What is in there? Do I have a juniper right next to that window? Um, is that the hazard that I need to? And then you dial up, you reduce the exposure by removing that juniper. So the work that you have to do to the windows a little less. Or am I going to have embers coming to that area in the 5 foot feet? What is it in there? Is it gravel? Is it um, mulch or something else that could catch on fire? Or trash cans? Remove that in there. And as you know, go remove each one of those items, you can see exactly what you need to do. So after all that, like in the side of my house, in the front right now, I have double pane uh, windows, and but in the side of the house, I still have to do this. It's a long-term process. We got to start somewhere. I'm talking retrofitting. You do double pane tempered glass on both sides because I have a lot of heat coming out from the homes next to me in there. So it's just removing the hazards first and then deciding what to do based on the hazard that you removed in there.
Is there like for folks who have standing homes and are looking at retrofitting, is that what kind of expert can someone call to come out and assess something like that and help them understand what would be helpful?
Well, there are a few companies starting to pop up, and I can provide some information to you later on that are starting to do this work. There's This is kind of new, so in the sense that there's kind of new companies popping up. So it has to be somebody reliable. Still, a lot of people say that, yeah, I know what we're doing, um, but it'll be somebody that understand. And sometimes titles tend to be confusing. I'll provide you some that I think will be great for you to have for the retrofit homes. For the new homes, you're gonna have the advice of the fire department. You're gonna have the building codes and all that to help you easily to get to plus by following those steps. Uh, and then the other part is the contractors themselves. So right now, if you guys have any influence, it's this Assembly Bill 1143 that is mandating CAL FIRE to have a training course developed and certification for contractors to do retrofitting. If that passes, will start happening right away in January 2026. And the beautiful thing about that is that when you hire a contractor, you look for that certification so you
Mm.
know what it can be. Right now, it's a lot of contractors that when I did my house, I had to educate the contractor. I asked him, I wanted to enclose my eaves. I said, what for? Just put 16 of an inch mesh and you're fine. I said, no, I need to enclose them because the danger that I have next to me, the assessment tells me that I have to be next level.
Mm.
And I had to convince the contractor. So a lot of times the contractor can kind of derail us from it. So if this bill passes, uh, hopefully it does. Uh, Look for that certification. Meanwhile, I'll be more than glad to provide some names to the group later.
If you are not on the PostFire mailing list, go to postfirelay.org and sign up for our mailing list or join the network, and you will get all of the updates from us. We're also preparing a full guide to home hardening. So if you want to see that, go join PostFire or sign up for our mailing list. Okay, so let's get down to the like juicy part. If one were to build to IBHS Wildfire Plus standard or retrofit to any level of IBHS certification, what does it mean for a homeowner? Like what benefits does it provide? Have insurers officially adopted it as a standard? What does it mean to your day-to-day life and potentially insurance bills?
Yeah, I think I could start out and then pass it off to Jay again. So initially, it's really giving your house a much higher chance of surviving even these high intensity wildfires, so that when the wildfire passes through, you have a higher chance of returning to a home that's still standing. Um, and so really it's first about survivability of the home. And then second is when you've taken these steps, you go through a certification or process whereby we ensure that the home is built to the standard. And then confirming that, we issue a designation. So you'll have a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that's a certificate that you can use to have a discussion with the various insurance carriers in California. I will say that there is no guarantees, but all the insurance carriers are looking for homes that have significantly reduced their risk, and in particular are implementing this program. And so it opens the door to have a conversation with an insurance carrier that could lead to um, a a quote being offered to you. And I'll give you an example in the town of Paradise, which was the town that was heavily impacted by the Camp Fire in 2018. Mercury Insurance is writing insurance for all homes that have a wildfire prepared home designation in the town of Paradise.
Oh, that's a really, really big deal. Yeah, we'll get into the specifics of what we've heard in terms of what's on offer, discount wise, but just quickly, what is involved in getting the IBHS certification? How much does it cost? How quickly, how does one do that? Is it a website? What's the process?
Yeah, we have a website, wildfireprepared.org. Go to the website, it steps you through the process, and um, we have a how-to checklist. It's how to prepare your home for an assessment by IBHS. So we recommend downloading that checklist, printing it off, walking around your house. If you have a existing house that you're retrofitting and you have some work to do based on the requirements in the checklist, then go through and complete those steps and then return to the website and submit an application. There is a $125 fee. We are a nonprofit organization. We are not trying to make money off of this. The majority of that fee is for us to hire a third-party assessor to go out and gather the information that we need, the data and the photographs in order to evaluate and ensure that the standard has been met, and which point we can issue the certificate of designation. And that process, if you apply and your house is really ready for the inspection, that you've done the work, any work that's needed to be done to reach the standard, that process can take just a few weeks. If in the process we determine that a few additional steps are needed, then that can take a little bit longer depending on how long it takes to remediate those few things.
Okay. So $125, website wildfireprepared.org. Okay. In California, for those of us who are building from the ground up again, or for the first time, We have something called Chapter 7A, which is a fire safe building mandate for new builds in fire prone areas. So if that means that like if you fall within a certain geographic area on the CAL FIRE map, you are required to build with certain levels of mitigation no matter what by law. So again, according to Headwaters Economics, 60% of homes between Palisades and Eaton are within the Chapter 7A maps. So 60% of us have to build to Chapter 7A anyway. And an important thing that I want to mention about Chapter 7A is that if you fall within a zone that is required to build to a certain level, mitigation level, and you have insurance with ordinance and law coverage, that ordinance and law coverage can be used for your mitigation efforts. So when we talk about how to afford this, that's what those mitigation or that ordinance and law coverage is for, in addition to energy efficiency and other things that are required by code. But just so you start thinking about it, check if you have ordinance and law coverage and know that mitigation, at least the 7A mitigation requirements, theoretically should fall under that. So Steve, can you just run me through? I know some of the IBHS standard is covered by 7A. Can you run me through these
Right.
gray boxes?
Right. So here on the screen, you'll note the structural components, so like the roof and gutters and so forth on the left-hand side. And then we have three different columns here. This is the IBHS Wildfire Prepared Home Plus standard. And this is the California Building Code Chapter 7A requirements as IO reference. So, and then here's the difference in construction to meet the Wildfire Prepared Home Plus standard. There's a comment here. So, for gutters, there's no additional, or I'm sorry, for roof, there is both standards require a Class A fire rated roof. So there's no difference in the standard. And where you see these gray boxes, there is some slight differences. So for gutters and gutter protection and downspouts, we require all non-combustible materials in the gutter downspout and the gutter guard, whereas Chapter 7A requires non-combustible gutters and downspouts, but just a means of covering the gutter to protect it from the buildup of debris. It doesn't specify that it needs to be non-combustible. So, and you go down through, you see many of them are similar or very, there's an option in 7A that meets the requirement of Wildfire Prepared Home Plus. And then I'll note down here this orange box, 7A is about the building. It does not address the space around the structure. And this one is about fences and retaining walls within 5 feet of the home. We require non-combustible fencing materials. And so Chapter 7A does not address that. I will note that the state of California, through the Board of Forestry and Fire Protection, is addressing the defensible space through regulation that's currently in process.
Can you just quickly touch on zone zero and what that is and how that's relevant here?
Yes, and I know Jay can also touch on that very well. So zone zero, that's the first 5 feet out from the wall of the house, horizontally out from the wall. And that's an area where we have, through our research at our research center, which is the photograph that you see behind me, and during our post-fire analysis, we routinely see structures that are damaged because of combustible items that are located within 5 feet of the house. And when we go out and do damage inspection, and we were on the ground on the Eaton and Palisades fires, and we focus our analysis on the structures that were damaged, light or had any level of damage, and not the destroyed, because when you're looking at a destroyed structure, you really can't recreate where the home ignited and from what. Was it embers? Was it flames? And what item may have ignited first, leading to the ignition of the house. So you really can't recreate that unless someone was there and witnessed this and told you how it unfolded, or maybe there was photographs and video. So we focus on the damaged structures. And then we can see, okay, this is where the damage is on the house. These are the items of the house that were damaged. And then we have a much higher chance of recreating how that occurred. And we routinely see items in that first 5 feet, whether it was embers landing there, igniting those items, or maybe fire burning from further away into that area, igniting items within the 5 feet that results in damage to the structure. Now, if we could recreate how the damage or loss occurred to homes that were destroyed, we would also see that items in zone zero led to that destruction. So it is without a doubt in the area that surrounds a house, the most critical area and requires the most critical or stringent fuel reduction. And Jay, I think Jay can speak a lot to this as well.
Yeah, so just to the Zone Zero came from Assembly Bill 3074, so it's mandated by the state to have the Board of Forestry come out with the regulation. The governor asked us to do it by the end of the year, so Zone Zero will be for new construction. Everything goes well, will be uh, if the timeline that we have right now continues, will be January 1st, 2026, or beginning of 2026. For existing construction, it'll be 3 years later. So it'll be 2026, might be January, may not be January. It's a lot of work needs to be completed before that. But for new construction, we'll be in there. And also know that rearrangement, Chapter 7A is going to move to a new Section 7, which is bringing everything together to a single while an urban interface code, instead of having it in chapter 14, 22, and all that, it will be a lot easier for everybody to work on. So that's coming up next year as well. And the Zone Zero mandate from AB 38 was to create an ember resistant zone. And the studies that Steve mentioned, but also the the studies coming from National Institute for Standards and Technologies and some testing and experience that we had have through many years of collecting damage assessment data or no damage assessment data. I had the opportunity to work with a team with CAL FIRE many years ago. That for several years we went to see the homes that burned, why they burned, but also homes that didn't burn, why they didn't burn. And those assessments came out with this output that those first 5 feet are critical, and it makes sense. The heat from your fireplace feels great when you're 10 feet away, um, or you're in a camping site. But as soon as you get too close, the whole thing changes. The radiation, and maybe you get some embers towards you. That's the whole idea. Separate that, remove that path of fire into the house.
And if I could
This
add to that, you might see homes that survived and then homes that were lost, and you wonder why did that occur? And the fire environment is a very complex environment. A fire doesn't burn with the same intensity throughout the entire fire. You have some areas that are very intense and some areas that are less intense. And so it's really hard to say that, well, this home survived, why it survived, unless you really dug into why it survived. It might have a fire engine parked in the driveway that defended that home. It might have features of the home and the surrounding area that were more resilient than a house that was nearby that burned. It might have experienced a much less intense fire than the home that was a couple doors down. And we see the winds that are associated with these types of fires are very high winds, but you get much variability in the wind speed and direction within the community itself, and even from one parcel to the next that are right next door to each other. So, unless you're on the ground and really dig into and examine why houses survived and why some didn't, it can be a confusing thing, and you might jump to some conclusions that aren't necessarily true.
mm,
Post-fire analysis is great to identify vulnerabilities and not to define successes because you don't know what happened. And the conditions changed by feet can be just is that small of the conditions changing because something was there that created a flame or something wasn't there to create a flame propagation or ember propagation. So uh, when we were going out there finding out vulnerabilities, and thank you, Steve, great point, not successes because those are hard to define unless you were right there.
Yeah, during the fires, a friend of ours is on the Malibu Volunteer Firefighter Brigade, and we were hearing from him that the most important thing was the thing that he saw the most was people's houses going up because they hadn't taken in their cushions outside. So,
Let me say
okay.
one more thing about that. So when you're in the fire department, after working for Los Angeles County for almost 34 years, in the instructions that we get when you're gonna go defend a house, the first thing that the firefighters do when they get a house is to remove the stuff out of the 5 feet.
Mhm.
So, but that takes time. So they show up and there's firewood in there. First thing, start doing cushions, all the stuff out of the middle of the house. Best thing for to provide a room for them to defend your house is to have done that ahead of time, like you were saying, cushions, trash cans, mulch, all that should not be there. So the firefighters can go straight into working on the fire instead of spending time removing those objects will be a lot easier. Also, give them a space to work in, like in the sides of my house right here. The station fire came to the backyard of the house. Um, I was working at the base. I came back to the house to grab our papers. Family was already gone, evacuated. I came to the house to grab stuff, our papers and the valuables that we have. And I was pleasantly surprised an LA City engine was parked right in front with hoses on both sides of my house. They didn't know that I work for the fire department, and LA County and LA City, we have a little rift. So that was the LA City engine. And I asked the captain, why do you choose my house? He said, because we can get in and get out. It's safe for us, and we can better job when we're not worry about what's behind us or how they can get in, get out, which is the first thing that you do as a firefighter. Where is your temporary refuge area, and where is your evacuation route? So we can really make their safety also a priority at the same time that we protect our home.
Mhm. Okay, so if you want to figure out as a homeowner, if you fall within it, you have to build a Chapter 7A. You have to look up the CAL FIRE Fire Hazard Severity Zone map, which you can just Google that, or we're also going to link to it in our Home Hardening 101 guide. You just type in your address and then you check where you fall on the map. And if you fall within a very high fire severity zone in a city or any wildfire zone in any unincorporated area, then your building plans will have to meet Chapter 7A. So as you
Caveat,
can see, sorry.
one caveat on that. The maps are recommended by CAL FIRE, but they are approved by local government. And
Mhm.
local government can extend those areas if they have. So I will, the maps for Southern California were approved, were sent to local government in March, late March or early April of this year. After 120 days, the approved maps by local government adopted by ordinance should show. I will really encourage to look at the locally adopted maps in addition to the CAL FIRES. Right now, just see CAL FIRE, but because
We'll make
those are
sure
the
to we'll make sure to follow up with specific instructions on how to do that. I think for now, you're watching this, just keep it in your mind that if you are required to build a 7A, there's not a huge gap from what you have to do to getting to IBHS plus, which means that you could have all of the benefits on your insurance policy and getting off of Fair Plan, for example. So we have 20 minutes left, and I want to leave a little time for questions that we haven't answered. So I want to start getting into the financial aspect of this, which is how much does it cost and how much does it save? So, on average, Steve, can we talk a little bit about what it costs to implement? I know that I think Headwaters Economics has said that it's about $2,800 or something to reach Chapter 7A in additional measures. That maybe I have that number wrong. That seems low, but what does it add to a build to reach IBHS Wildfire Prepared Plus?
Yeah, in the Headwaters Economics and IBHS did a study on the cost of new construction in California. So looking at a home in Northern California and then one in Southern California in the Los Angeles area. And So the cost, and there was three levels: a baseline, which was building to Chapter 7A, and then enhanced, which is building to wildfire prepared home base, which really the only difference is looking at that zone zero. And it was like $2,800, $3,000 difference there from going from baseline to enhanced. And then the third one is optimum, which was going to um, the wildfire prepared home plus level. And in Southern California, that was about a $2,700 or $27,000 added cost. Um, so, yeah, and it's much more efficient and cost effective to do this now while you're building from fresh. If you're retrofitting, you have the removal of the item from the structure, and then you have to, pay for that to haul it away and all that, and then you have to put the new item on the structure. So there's added costs when you get to the retrofit.
Mhm. So, in ballpark retrofitting a house, like let's say the average home is about 2,000 square feet. Any idea of ballpark to retrofit a home?
It is a little bit different for each home, as each home is unique in what materials it was originally constructed of and stuff. So it's a little bit hard to say, but it adds more expense. Headwaters did a cost of retrofit study. I think it was released last year, and it was roughly 10 to 20% added cost.
10 to 20%. Okay. Um, Okay, well, that's a significant amount, but I want to flag that there are a number of different ways to access support for mitigation efforts. I also want to ask you guys, which we'll get into in a second, I want to ask you about what is the effect are there, first of all, are there examples of either fair plan or insurance? I know that we heard Mercury Insurance say that they were looking at saying that they would offer 40% off of insurance policies if you met IBHS Wildfire Prepared Plus. I know they haven't implemented that, but they're working on it. I know AAA has said it's like 10 or 15% off of your policy. I think you mentioned 5% off of the California Fair Plan. What are there any other real world numbers that you know of in terms of like what the actual savings would be? And then that can also apply to if there are efficiency savings. I'm curious if there are efficiency savings by building home hardened.
Yeah, I could share my screen again and bring up. Um, and so this is the California Department of Insurance's Safer from Wildfires initiative. So um, I'll go to the second slide of that. And they list items down here. So if you have a Class A fire rated roof, a 5 foot ember resistant zone, and so forth, that you can get some discounts once the admitted insurance carrier, or the insurance carrier operating in California, has their rate filing approved. Some are still waiting for theirs to be approved, but in each insurance carrier is a little bit different in how they might interpret the amount of discount for each particular item listed here. So that's one item through the Department of Insurance. If you have a policy through the California Fair Plan, they do offer structural protection discounts of up to 10% for doing a list of items, and an additional 5% for defensible space work. So that area that surrounds the house of doing some of the items that are listed here on the list. So you can get up to 15% there um, for doing the defensible space and looking at the structure. And then down here under Firewise, it says can qualify if a community is designated Firewise through the National Fire Protection Association, or NFPA, then you can get an additional 10%. And it applies to the wildfire portion of the policy. So there is some benefit for doing that through the California Fair Plan as well.
I mean, that's potentially huge savings over the lifetime of a home. Uh,
And may I add from my own experience, and remember, where the house is now has taken several years. It's been slowly, I'm talking retrofitting part. But from my own experience, I was able to get myself out of FAIR plan it throughout the process. And we know the FAIR plan is a lot more costly because you have to get not only insurance, limited insurance for wildfire, but then you have to get everything else. So it becomes more expensive. So when I got the wildfire prepared home, my insurance right now, my admitted insurance company right now, and that's another thing, admitted and non-admitted work on it differently. How they interpret safer from a wildfire. But my admitted company was tapping me in the shoulder saying, "Babe, we might drop you. Um, you live in an area, the house is against the Angeles National Forest, is the backyard, the Angeles National Forest." And when I received the wildfire prepared home designation, all that conversation ended. And they said, "Yeah, we work with you. You still have to pay considerable amount of money. They haven't had the rates approved yet for discounts, but I'm looking forward to that. But just not being in fair plan has been savings by itself."
Mm.
Yeah, it's really, as I mentioned earlier, about doing the work so that first and foremost, your home is more survivable to a wildfire, that you have a home to come back to. And then secondly, is it makes the home more insurable because you've significantly reduced the risk and taken the measures that we know are based in scientific research and have been field validated during post-fire analysis, that we know these actions work.
So I've also been to Jay's house, and the thing I want to just quickly touch on is that like there's one of our partners in hosting this event today is called a project called Case Study Adapt, which is an amazing endeavor. Dustin Bramwell and Leo. The idea there is to illustrate, I think when people think of hardened homes, we think of ugly homes. We think of something that's like an eyesore or just a box of concrete. And I think it's important to mention that there are a lot of people. Case Study Adapt is doing this incredible endeavor to show that homes that are hardened can be really beautiful. There's also a bunch of landscape designers who work with Zone Zero, who work with fire resistant materials or fire resistant methodologies. This does not mean that you have to have a concrete bunker and an ugly house or ugly property. And I think that's really important as people are already grappling with loss. You can still have a beautiful home. Jay's home is very beautiful. So, okay, in terms of just quickly energy efficiency savings, are there any energy efficiency savings by building in this way? Yes.
Yes, for me, to installing double pane windows had been savings also. I took the opportunity when I improved the roof. I went to Class A. I had about 55-year-old roof, so I needed to be. So I took the opportunity to put insulation, and that has been quite a changes. We used to have and last year was a pretty hot year. Um, uh, we used to have the AC on day and night. After that, windows and the insulation in the roof, we don't need to turn it on at night. It's just part of the day. So the savings has been considerably, and not only heating, not only cooling, but heating as well.
So we're talking about savings on our insurance. We're talking about savings on our power bills. And now I mentioned this at the top, but I just want to touch on this here and like hit this point home. If there has been a widely publicized, everybody in the world knows about it, wildfire in our area, anybody who's coming into that area to either lend on that home if we go to refinance that home, or buy that home if you want to sell it, or if you leave it for your kids and they want to sell it, everybody's going to know that that home has been through a wildfire. And their first question is going to be, is it wildfire safe? Is it built resilient? If the house next door to you is built to IBHS Wildfire Prepared Plus and yours is not, and you're the buyer, which one are you going to buy? It's just an obvious equation. Lenders and mortgage companies are also looking for lending. It'll be a lot easier to get a mortgage if you can prove to them that the thing that they are shoring up their investment with is safer. So it can make getting a mortgage a lot easier. It will make getting insurance easier and cheaper, and it can improve your resale value. Again, somebody who's buying a home that they then have to retrofit to make it safe is probably not going to want to pay as much for that home. There are some real world examples of that, statistics on that. So Um,
And
all of this, go ahead.
if I can say, an Assembly Bill 38 mandates disclosure of the improvements as a defensible space and home hardening. That must be disclosed to the new property owner. So you have done all this work, you have an upper hand to sell your house because you have all this work. And that's mandated by Assembly Bill 38, and your realtor can help you with that.
So we know now that it's definitely preferable to build to wildfire resilient standards. So with only 10 minutes left, I just want to check in on like let's just like rapid fire go through a couple things and then get to people's questions. Neighbors are starting to see homes go up. People are really worried that they're seeing, 2x4, 2x6 framing. Is it a misnomer to think that a house that has wood on the inside is not fire safe?
Yes, that is a misnomer. It's all about the exterior components, exterior materials that the home is made out of, and having good materials there. So you can have a stick-built house. You just want to have like non-combustible siding and dual pane tempered glass windows and enclosed eaves with non-combustible materials, Class A roof, and so on. So it's really about the exterior materials that the home is made out of.
Fantastic, which is referred to as the envelope. Okay, so for folks who are now building from the ground up, let's say everybody on this call has been evangelized and is like, great, I want to do it. How do they do it? They go when is it something that when we're talking to our architect, we then bring to them and say, hey, we want to make sure that you design to this standard? Is it something that we take to the contractor? It seems like it would be better to go to the architect, correct?
Yes, I start with the architect. We do have on our wildfireprepared.org website the technical standard for the Wildfire Prepared Home program. So you can download a copy of that, take it to your architect, and say, "Hey, when you're designing this, we want to make sure that the roof has a Class A material. We want to make sure that the walls are non-combustible." And and then, as Jay mentioned earlier, the local fire and planning authority is going to review that and ensure that it meets the requirements of the building code for your area. But when they see that all of the stuff in that architectural plan is at a high level, it's going to pass through the process much more efficiently.
Great. Okay, so in terms of how to pay for it, there's a few different things. Again, if your home falls within the high fire severity zone or you're required to implement hardening methods for any reason by law, then you should look and see if you have ordinance and law coverage under your insurance. It may apply to paying for this to some degree. It also applies again to any electrification upgrades, any energy efficiency stuff. So just bear in mind it's not all for this, but that is a big part of this. A lot of folks applied for an SBA loan after the fires. If you, unfortunately, I'm pretty sure the deadline is closed. I don't remember, but if you have already been approved for or can get approved for a primary residence SBA loan, you can add up to 20% additional. You can borrow an additional 20% of your loan amount for home hardening efforts. So let's say you have a loan for $500,000, you potentially might be able to get another $120,000 to cover mitigation efforts at a super low interest rate of 2.5%. And then two incredible orgs, the Resiliency Company and Insurance for Good, have come together to make something called the Resiliency Delta Fund. Their idea is a large fund that uses grants and loans to help people pay for their resiliency efforts. It has not yet launched, but we will share, PostFire will share more information on it as soon as it becomes available. And again, if you are not already signed up for PostFire as a survivor, please do. That means anyone who is directly impacted, you are welcome. And if you just are interested, you can join our mailing list. We'll keep you abreast of all of these things. Okay, so in terms of paying for it, those are like the best, most widely available options I can think of. So now I'm just going to jump to a couple of questions that have come in during the live Q&A. Does the Zone Zero program include installed water capture elements such as gray water systems that feed into a drip gutter and bioswale water flow drainage systems? At my home that burned, those trees in the water flow did not burn at all.
So for the wildfire prepared home program, it's a non-combustible zone. So that first 5 feet measured from the edge of the wall, the outer edge of the wall, 5 feet out horizontally. We do. It's not a fully non-combustible in the sense that, like, the if you have a air conditioning unit that sits in that zone, and it's going to have some combustible components to it. That's, not a problem. If you have irrigation valves in there, they're plastic, not a problem. We're not asking people to move that type of stuff. So I'm not as familiar with what you just mentioned, though, those types of systems.
Little specific. We can
From
come
my
back to them.
from working in Zone Zero, it's just if what is being installed is non-combustible or petroleum-based material or something that will catch on fire, more than likely it will be allowed.
Okay. Are there different levels of compliance? Our ADU is 10 feet away from the main house, but the rest of the home is in full compliance with the IBHS standards. Would we have issues with gaining insurance? I guess, would we have issues with meeting IBHS standard?
Yes. So at the plus level, we don't allow any additional structures within 30 feet. So that would be able to meet the base level designation, but not the plus level designation.
Yeah, we have another question. It's like if the replacement home is built of non-combustible construction materials, i.e. concrete or metal studs, can the reduction of the 30-foot separation between it and the detached ADU be considered for IBHS plus?
We are doing a lot of research around structure fire spread right now at our research center in the backside of that concrete building in the kind of the upper left side there. We started out with large sheds of igniting them and then turning on the bank of fans. Whoops, the other direction. This bank of fans, there's 105 fans. Each one is 6 feet in diameter, and they can blow up to 135-mile-an-hour wind through that concrete structure that's behind them. And so we open the hangar style doors in the back end, blow the wind through it. It pushes the fire from that large shed towards a single family home that we've built to look at the distance between them, the materials that they're made out of, the effect of different openings like windows and doors and so forth. And we are now in the process of conducting research on accessory dwelling units and igniting them on the outside of that structure like they would typically in a wildfire, and then pushing that fire across that accessory dwelling unit towards a single family home. So right now, our 30-foot standard for plus is still in effect. No structures within 30 feet. However, as this research matures, and if we find that we can, make that 20 feet, for example, then we'll make that adjustment at the time.
Please do. All right. Well, we've got 1 minute left. So I just want a little recap here a little bit and say what we learned today is the importance of building resilient on all the different levels of homeownership and surviving wildfire and having a family or life that you want to protect. How effective it can be to bringing your insurance costs down or maintaining your equity in your huge investment that is your home and your property. And we learned a little bit about how much it costs, and we learned a little bit about how it's affordable. But I hope more than anything, people come away from this with a little bit more of an understanding of that all gobbling monster that is fire, how it spreads, and what we can do to kind of keep it out of our structures. I also want to encourage everyone to go look up the difference between a wildfire, a wildland urban interface, which is when a wildfire interacts with a urban interface, such as a city or a town, and then what is called an urban conflagration, which is when fire spreads from house to house to house. I am an accidental new expert in these things, which I never signed up to be, but it's super interesting. Anyway, I hope that this has been fruitful for everyone on this call. Thank you, Jay and Steve, so much for joining us and giving us your expertise. I again want to point everyone to postfirela.org. You can find all of our guides to all different recovery related things. We're launching our platform that guides you through every single step of recovery, one step at a time, in a bespoke timeline just relevant to your circumstances starting in September. We would love to have you. It's 100% free. Check out IBHS.org, and I hope that everybody on here is a new evangelist for home governing. Thank you guys so much, and have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
Thank you, Io. Best wishes, everybody.